Good morning, brothers and sisters. This is Sean. This is the Aftermath Podcast. I want you to imagine, just for a moment, that you're sitting in a prison cell. You're sitting there by yourself in silence, head bowed, just sitting there quietly. Now, I want you to imagine that the door of your cell opens and a man is standing there outside of your cell with a piece of paper in his hand. He hands you the piece of paper, and on it, there are two words: full pardon. This man tells you all of your charges have been dropped. You've been declared not guilty. You're free to go. Just think about how that would make you feel. Now I want you to imagine that that same man hands you another piece of paper. And it's an adoption agreement showing that he has adopted you. So now all of your charges are dropped. You're free to go. And you now have a new identity. But even after all of this, you decide to stay seated in your cell. This is what so many of us struggle with in the church. You see, this cell that I'm talking about today is our sin. Our sinful lifestyle. How many times have you heard stories of people in your family or people in your community or people at your job or people that you know working so hard to break free of the shackles of an addiction that they had? Doesn't matter what it is. But they work really hard and they, as we like to say in today's society, they get sober. You see that person break free of the chains of that addiction. And they're doing really good for a while. And they're changing their habits and they're building a new lifestyle. And you can see that that person's happy and they're really, really doing well. And then some time passes and you find out that they fell back into that addiction or that issue, whatever it was. But they appear on the outside to have everything together. They do what they can to make sure that they look like they have everything going well for them. But you know inside, they're still sitting in that cell. And some of these people might be Christians. Some of these people might be believers. But secretly, they've been battling this thing inside for a very long time. And most people would never know. Most people would have no idea. But you can tell that there's something going on there that is destroying them inside. John 8:36 says, "Whom the Son sets free is free indeed." But here's the thing. That cell, it's our safe haven. For a lot of people who live their lives stuck in an addiction, that's their safe haven. And it's hard for them to think about living their lives without that, because it's always something they can go back to. And they forget how to live without it. They forget how to function without that thing in their life, because it's routine, it's familiar, it's comfortable. They think to themselves, I'll never be free of this, while simultaneously feeling guilt and shame. And then at the same time, as I just mentioned, they feel a false sense of security. They're like, well, how am I supposed to live without this thing in my life? How am I supposed to function without this? Because they've spent so much time in that prison, in that cell, they don't know how to live outside of it. I've seen that happen in a lot of people's lives. That's not how we were meant to live. Whom the Son sets free is free indeed. Jesus doesn't want us to live in bondage. He came, he lived, he died, and he rose again so that we could be free, so that we could live a life, as he says, more abundantly. But here's the reality, brothers and sisters. For some people, that's really hard. It's really hard because it's hard to imagine not living with that one thing. But you hear these people say, I don't want this in my life anymore. So there's this push and pull. There's this tension between, I can't imagine living without this. How am I going to live without this thing in my life? And I don't want this in my life anymore. It's a battle that goes on in our heads every single day. And maybe this is you. Maybe I'm speaking to you and you are the person that I'm describing here. Maybe this is the way that you've been living your life. I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to tell you there's a way out. But it all starts in your mind. You see, because in this situation, your mind is your greatest enemy. And you're still sitting in your cell. And you're thinking to yourself, I feel like the enemy is beating me up right now. I feel like the enemy is pummeling me. Listen, I've been there. I know how that feels. But I also know that we have not been given a spirit of timidity or fear. We have been given a spirit of power and of love and self-control. We have within ourselves the ability to get up out of that cell and just go free. Because remember, at the beginning, I told you about a man who's standing outside of your cell right now. All of the charges that are against you are dropped. And that man is Jesus. You see, Jesus paid the penalty for our sin. He took that ugly addiction that you are ashamed to tell anybody about. He took it on himself. He assumed responsibility for your sin when it was not his to pay. It was not his debt to pay, but he said, I will gladly pay this debt because they don't have the ability to ever do it. They never could. So he has given you a full pardon. He's paid your debt in full. And I know what you're thinking. Yeah, but what if I do it again? Here's the great part about what's taken place. You now live under grace. And this is a process. There will be times where you'll fall back into this. There will be times where you'll have urges and thoughts, and you'll feel understandably uncomfortable because at first there's an adjustment that has to take place. You have to change some of your habits and your routines because your whole life has been structured around this one thing. So at first it's going to feel like it's daunting. It's that way for everybody. Even who don't live with things like this, making big changes in life starts with small actions. But at first it's daunting. There's no doubt about that. But it's no quality of life for us to just stay in our sin. It's no quality of life for us to stay in our addiction. That's not how we were meant to live. That's not the life that Jesus envisioned for us when he was hanging on the cross paying for our sin. He envisioned a life more abundant than we could ever imagine, a life where we aren't dominated by addictions or struggles or sin. He wanted us to be free. And it's hard at the beginning because you're building new habits, you're teaching yourself new behaviors. So it takes time. But I need you to understand, the first battle you have to win is the battle with your mind. It all starts in the mind. You have to understand in your mind, okay, I don't have to stay here in this cell anymore. And then it goes to a heart knowledge, right? First it's a head knowledge, then it's a heart knowledge. The heart knowledge is where the belief sets in, where you really do believe I'm free. And then once that takes place, that's where the change really takes place in your life. That's where visible evidence can be seen that there's a change in your life. You get up and you leave the cell. And then in that place, the more that you wake up every morning and you remind yourself, hey, I'm free. I'm free. I don't have to live that way anymore. I'm free. When those thoughts come, we take every thought captive and we make it obedient to Jesus Christ. And we say, nope, I'm not going to live that way anymore. Nope, I'm not going to go back to that cell. Nope, I'm not going to go back to those behaviors. Nope, I'm not going to do that anymore. And sometimes it will be very hard. But understand, again, we live under grace. And God knows, Jesus knows, you're going to mess up. But there will be grace waiting for you in that moment on the other side of the mess up. But what's important is that you receive that grace and you don't spend time beating yourself up in guilt. Remember how earlier I was telling you about feelings of guilt and shame? Everybody has them. It is what it is. We're humans. We have a conscience that alerts us when we've done something wrong. We feel guilt, we feel shame. But we have to be mindful of that. We have to recognize that and then let it motivate us to change. And I understand for some of us who are listening to this episode who've been in an addiction for a long time, getting free of that addiction is not easy. I understand. But there's a difference between something being hard and something being impossible. It's hard, but it's not impossible. We've all heard stories of people who've been in bondage to drug addiction, getting clean and getting sober. Problems with alcohol, getting clean and getting sober. Problems with pornography, getting free and getting sober, living free. Brothers and sisters, understand this. The devil can lie to you, but only you can allow him to defeat you. If you believe his lies, then he wins. But all he can do is lie to you. You have to decide whose voice you will believe. You have to decide ultimately. I'm going to believe what this voice over here, the devil's voice, is saying to me, or I'm going to believe what God says about me. And what God says about you is that you are loved. You are forgiven. You are covered in his grace. If you come to him and you say, take this away from me. I don't want this life anymore. I don't want this way of living anymore. He will set you free. And then you'll hear a different voice. You'll hear, I love you. You're forgiven. My grace is sufficient for you because my strength is made perfect in your weakness. So that cell that you used to live in, that's not your home anymore. Now you can rest beneath the shadow of his wings. You can feel free, and you can believe that you're free because you are. But ultimately, it comes down to a decision, a conscious decision every day that I don't want to live that way anymore. I don't want to be a prisoner in that cell anymore. I want to be free. I want to be an example of freedom for everyone in my life. I want to serve a different master, one that loves me and not one that just wants to steal from me. Remember, the enemy of our souls, the accuser of the brethren, he came to steal, kill, and destroy. But Jesus has come that we may have life and have it more abundantly. So I got a couple questions for you. It has to do with our thoughts. Where do we need to audit our thoughts and retake control? Remember, as Christians, when a negative thought comes into our mind, we have the power to take that thought captive and make it obedient to Christ. We have the power to say, nope, no, I'm not going to do that. No, I'm not going to think that way. No, I'm not going to look at that thing. No, I'm not going to get high today. I'm not going to get drunk today. I'm not going to do that. And also, not just winning the war in our mind, but winning the war in our life. Where do we need to audit our reality and change course? What behaviors in our life, what routines, what structures do we need to adjust? What things do we need to change in our reality so that we don't have the ability to go back to that old thing, that old behavior, that old addiction? Where do we need to make changes in our life, in our routine, in our everyday? Where? How can we adjust our reality so that we don't have the time to do this thing over here? Well, one thing you can do is build accountability. Put people in your life who will hold you accountable, who will check in on you. Be more transparent and accountable with people about what you're doing in your downtime. Maybe make different choices. Write a schedule out and say, okay, from this time to this time, I'm going to do this. And that schedule is visible to everybody so that they hold you accountable. They check in with you. Hey, how are you doing with this? And they know this is the way you're running your life. Exercise, something I do every day. I exercise every day because I know mentally I can win the war in my mind with physical exercise. because mentally it helps me to be where I need to be present, to be in the right headspace so that I can be present and help. And I can be the man I need to be for my family. And then maybe you have to just stop hanging out with certain friends, stop going certain places, stop looking at certain things, adjust your life so that this new lifestyle you've chosen to live can thrive and flourish and continue. But ultimately, the biggest thing that you need to understand here is that sometimes this comes down to us believing, really believing in the sufficiency of the blood of Christ. Our lives are an example of what we believe. And if we believe that Jesus' sacrifice on the cross and the price that he paid for our sin to be canceled is really enough, we'll live like it. It is enough. It is sufficient. It's more than sufficient, in fact. And what he did on the cross more than satisfies the debt that we keep living in every single day. Your addiction might be very strong, but Jesus is stronger. And he defeated sin and death and hell and the grave once and for all. So he has more power than that addiction has over you. Period. He does. I haven't had a sip of alcohol in over a year. I made that decision in my life. Now, I wouldn't say it was a debilitating addiction, but my life is better without it. I experience God in a way now that I never could have before. But my relationship with him is definitely deeper and stronger because I don't have that thing in my life anymore. And I've changed I've made adjustments to people I hang out with and things I do and how I relate to alcohol now. And I live a very, very regimented lifestyle now that doesn't allow time for that. And I've also made a conscious decision that I don't want it to be a part of my life anymore. We can do this. We can be free. And if Jesus said, "It is finished," he meant it. It wasn't just him saying, all the work that I needed to do here is finished. The mission is finished and it's accomplished. He also was talking about that addiction. It's finished. It's done. The work that he needed to do to pay for our sin and satisfy the debt that we owed, it is finished. So that means that we can be free. That means that we can find rest for our souls. True, lasting rest. Not just temporary escape at the hands of a substance or an image. We can be free. And whom the sun sets free is free indeed. And also, free people. Your testimony of God setting you free from that addiction can be a testimony and an encouragement to somebody else who wants to be free from theirs. And then it's a chain reaction it leads to numerous people being set free. That's the good news of the gospel, my friends. is that Jesus paid our debt so we didn't have to, and then we could be free. And we could live lives that could be a testimony to other people. But here's the question. Do you believe that? Because if you really believe it, then you'll live free. You'll be free. You will truly understand your new identity as a child of God. And it's one of the ways we can do that is telling ourselves who we really are. If you are a child of God, you are a son or a daughter of righteousness. You're not a sinner. You are a son or daughter of righteousness. That's who you are. And when you believe that and you really take ownership of that new identity, the enemy has a harder time breaking you. Because you realize that a son or daughter of righteousness doesn't live as a prisoner to those things anymore. You live serving Jesus. You live free and whole and complete in Jesus. Joyce Meyer says it this way: our past may explain why we're suffering, but we must not use it as an excuse to stay in bondage. Don't stay there. Don't stay in that cell. Don't stay in that addiction. Don't stay in that dysfunction any longer, brothers and sisters. Leave the cell. Leave it behind. Find freedom in Jesus. That's what you were created for. You were created to set other people free through your testimony, your lifestyle, your decisions, because they can look at you and say, it is possible because it was possible for them. They made that change. And I want the freedom that they have. And they find that freedom in Jesus through your testimony and your story. And that's how free people. That's how we live in freedom. And that's what we were created for. Live in freedom today. Don't let yourself be a prisoner any longer. You have a story to tell. Let it be one of victory. And as always, take up the mantle, carry the flag, live in the aftermath. God bless. Hey guys, thanks for checking out that episode. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and continue to share these episodes with your friends. Check us out on YouTube and on Spotify, and if you ever want to send us a message, please go ahead and do so. I'm going to try and respond to your comments as much as possible, and I will read those messages and I'll get back to you. Any questions that you guys have, feel free to send them over. We're going to try and answer those questions as quickly as possible. Again, thank you for checking out this content. God bless. See you next time.